Pupils in some schools could soon be allowed to take textbooks into exams. I'm going to read into this exclusive from the iPaper, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here. It's an exclusive from the iPaper with the headline that pupils in some schools could soon be allowed to take textbooks into exams. Exams expert says the plans, backed by head teachers for all subjects in the International Baccalaureate, I might mispronounce that if I apologise, could inspire similar changes at GCSE and A levels. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share this across social media so others are notified of this video. And that's not very good considering we're talking about education here that I can't even spell baccalaureate very well there. Hopefully I said it right that time around. Now, when I was younger, obviously I didn't have textbooks and exams. I never had anything allowed to take into me apart from like the pen and whatever was put in front of me and what's not. And it was just a case of, that was it. Never went as far as A levels for me personally. Now, some of you, I don't know how many of you who are listening have had textbooks to be able to take with you into your exams. Now, the question really is this a bad thing? Are we not? Because the question that I also say is, are we not giving children an edge? Are we not giving them an extra advantage that they shouldn't be having? Shouldn't they be learning to use their brain more rather than actually using a paper, using a textbook? Well, no, I think sometimes there's two ways around it. There could be the one way in which a textbook can be used to give them, while they're trying to figure out an answer, they could use the paper and the pen they have there to help them calculate or maybe draw up an answer that they might not be able to think using their head. And sometimes writing down information while you're trying to figure out a question could help you be more better understanding. Now, I'm not saying the textbooks will have the answers for them. They could help them get towards some of those goals. But I do think a textbook could be helpful. And I do actually think now that if I had something like that on my desk when I was going through my exams when I was younger, I think that might have given me a bit more of an edge. And I think it would also, yes, obviously we want them to memorize information, but I also think, just having that pen and paper there really helps. I mean, like a prime example of all the work that I do, from this and all the other projects that I do online. I have a calendar. I have a paper calendar here, not one on my phone because I prefer to write things down. I have a paper calendar here of things going on what date and whatnot, so I can plan ahead because it helps me. Like you can your brain can only hold so much information, and when your brain is young, it's like a sponge. You can absorb a lot, which is why I think originally obviously textbooks not being taken into exam, because obviously you want it all in here. You don't really want it all on the paper, but I do think that can help as well. Now, some people may disagree, and if you have disagreements, feel free to break it down, on why you think your textbook shouldn't be allowed to take into exams. I do think there should be a conversation here, but I also know is that, as times change, education, the way we teach our children, the way we teach the next generation of kids changes too. And teachers have to learn and change and adapt to those times, obviously, because computers weren't, there were computers when I was younger. They weren't a massive thing like they are now. They're not embedded. They weren't completely embedded. We were still doing a lot of paper and whatnot in school. But we did have computers. But now computers are literally everywhere when it comes to schools, colleges, and universities. So so you have to adapt to those times. And I do think this is something that, especially for those who are teachers and whatnot, please feel free to share your views down in the comments below about this, because I do think it's worth having a general discussion about it. So let's read more into this, you guys. So, pupils in some UK state schools could be allowed to use open textbooks in exams in all subjects and take them online as soon as 2030, the iPaper can reveal. So the International Baccalaureate IB is planning the change for its diploma courses aimed at 16 to 18 students. The move is being backed by the UK's largest secondary head teachers union, which says there is a lot of sense in open book exams as they encourage thinking critically and creativity. Do you remember what I said about writing things down? That's exactly what I meant. And an exam expert suggested that the change could lead to similar changes in GCSE and A levels if the curriculum and assessment review that Labour has begun takes notice of the plan. Now, before I go any further as well, and I think this is a fair, people will say this will, people just think that this could mean obviously more people passing as a result as well, because they'd be using a textbook to help them as well. I mean, it's not like we're not asking to put them a calculator next to them when it comes to sums. We're asking for a textbook, for them. I think that's really important. Matt Glanville, the IB Director of Assessment, said open book exams were exactly the direction of travel where we should be going, as they represent a shift away from memorized facts and towards complex problem solving. Yeah, I think that, the textbook on the side will help. In an interview with the iPaper, he said he wanted to bring open book exams to UK students as quickly as possible. The change will first have to be approved by UK exams regulator Ofqual. Asked about the possibility, the watchdog said it was open to innovations that deliver qualifications which reliably reflect what students know, understand and can do, and which are fair and accessible for students. The IB operates in more than 160 countries, but the diploma is only run in 102 UK schools, 22 of them state secondaries. However, the development could influence what happens in the rest of the sector. Professor Alan Smithers, a director of the Centre of Education and Employment Research at the University of Buckingham, said he did not think it would have a direct impact on A-levels and GCSEs. But he added that the government's curriculum and assessment review might be inspired by the IB plans. It is possible, since they're wanting to make these qualifications more accessible and broader, that the people making the recommendations may take notice of this change in the IB, the academic said. Mr. Glanville said the IB was working with the major UK GCSE and A-level exam boards, including AQA, Persons, Excel and the ODR on a plan to show Ofqual that digital assessment is the best way forward. We are going more digital, so it makes more sense to go towards that direction anyway. He said that his board's move towards open book exams in all subjects, which involves taking textbooks and keynote sheets into his assessment halls, fitted with its wider goal to move away from pen and paper exams by 2030. Yeah, we are eventually going to go down towards more computers than pen and paper. I still think learning to read and write are still, key aspects, but we are going less pen and less paper these days. This would mean some 5,000 students at the UK's IB schools taking exams online, allowing them to access data, news reports and video footage to support the specific assessments. If you're studying modern history, you'll be looking at news reports and video footage, he said. You can't get that in a paper-based exam. He added that science students would be able to create and interpret their own data rather than analysing a fixed data table on paper. Yeah, again, allows more creativity. That's the key word as well. If you think about how these young people are going to engage with technology for the rest of their lives, why is it their exams are being done using pen and paper, he asks. He's not wrong. Online exams will still be expected to take place in supervised exam halls, and a specific browser will be used to enable the tools needed for the assessments while blocking off other computer functions, Mr. Glanville added. Yeah, totally makes sense. We'll come back to this last bit in a second. Open book exams have already been used in some GCSE and A levels like English literature, but the IB plans would be different because it would cover all subjects. Tom Middlehurst, the assessment specialist at the Heads Union of Association of School and College Leaders, said, "There is a lot of sense in the idea of open book exams, as instead of simply testing a student's ability to memorize and recall facts, they place a great emphasis on thinking critically and creativity, something which employers often cite as vital skills. The exam system as it currently stands, particularly at GCSEs, is heavily weighed towards memorization as a result of the previous government's reforms. Any new approach to general exam result systems will need to be meaningfully consulted on and trialed before being introduced. The IB is currently on the second year of a multi-year research project to see whether open book exams make a positive impact on the student's experience. There are no UK schools involved in the pilot as it requires regulatory approval. Running a different trial independent of the digital assessment, and while we are trying various versions of the material, the student is allowed to bring into the exam," Mr. Glanville said. Maybe it's a copy of their text, maybe it's pre-approved summary of keynotes, or maybe it's a summary of the case studies that they've studied. If the pilot is successful, the IB must submit its proposals to Ofqual. If the plans are approved, the examination body must work with schools to ensure they have time to prepare for the shake-up. Yeah, and this is something you've got to gradually do. You can't just, I'm losing my clicking. You can't just click it basically in. I'm hopeful that the outcome of this research that will be benefiting students' well-being and the way in which they approve their exams, so they're focusing on the important understanding, trying not to cram their mind full of facts the days before the exam, Mr. Glanville has said. If it's successful and it benefits systems, obviously I want to get that benefits to students as quickly as possible, he said, adding, I can't see it being before 2030 unless there's a lot of extra research. Asked whether he envisions the end of pen and paper exams, he said yes. Eventually, I'm anticipating that all assessments of the IB will be done in that in digital space. Yeah, 100% agree. I agree too. I think it's all going to be done digitally as well. That's because it gives much more meaningful, authentic, engaging, interactive experience for students. Yep, agree. Mr. Middlehurst said, while there is merit moving away from antiquated pen and paper exams towards digital assessments, it will be important to ensure that all schools and colleges have access to technology and resources that they needed for this to happen. Yeah, of course. You without the money, you need to go towards that. So this is a shift from pen and paper to digital assessment, as we just there. So last month, the iPaper reported that Persons, the UK's largest exam board, intends to offer on-screen assessments for its EdXL GCSEs in history and business studies from 2027, and most other GCSEs and A levels by 2030. EdXL's GCSE in English language and English literature are already set to be offered on screen in this summer's exam series, subject to Ofqual's approval. In December 2023, the OCR board said it would offer digitalised assessed GCSEs in computer science for pupils starting their courses in 2025. And last year, AQA laid out plans for on-screen exams by 2030, saying it hoped the reading and listening components of GCSE Italian and Polish would be the first to move to digital exams in 2026. But the exam board has since said it would be pushing back its timetable because the plans are still waiting for regulatory approval. Last summer, Sir Ian Blunkman, Ofqual's chief regulator, said plans for digital exams to be treated with extreme caution due to fears all schools will not be able to run assessments fairly. Many schools will have weak connectivity, weak Wi-Fi systems, weak security, weak system resilience due to years of underinvestment in the school estate, he said. So this is one of the problems is that if you want to switch to such a system, you need to have all these things adherent to if we want to eventually end the scheme of pen and paper, which I do think we're going to go down with. But with all these things requires investment, requires money, and for the state schools to have this, they need the money to do so. Now, I can see the government putting money aside, separate money aside for the state schools to have this implementation if it goes that far. And we have this announcement that by 2030 there will be no more pen and paper for exams, for exams in GCSEs and A levels. Well, I don't know if it'll be that far, but I still think it's definitely something we need to have a fair discussion about. Now, like I said, I don't know too much about on the international stage outside of Europe or America or other parts of the world where how their schools are studied. Yes, of course, we know that there's still parts of the world that are in poverty, so obviously they're still relying on pen and paper. Some even, bless their hearts, are still using chalkboard, which for them as well. But we've been very fortunate to have an education system we have, but we're always looking to make improvements to it. And while we are advancing in technology, it makes more sense that we advance in technology we go alongside that technology instead of living in the past. And also, less paper obviously means good for the environment as well. So there's also that aspect as well from it. But as for the textbook thing, I don't have a problem with it, especially when it gives them, especially when rather than them having to memorize things. Like I said, writing things down makes a massive difference. I know a lot of people use their phones. They just use like the notebook and their apps or whatever to help memorize things or have things on their calendar to remind them of things as well. Like, you don't have to have everything in your brain. And that's what it used to be. It used to be like the premise is that you need to have everything all up here. You need to know everything up here. Well, I'm saying, no, you don't need to have everything up there. You can have it down in front of you. You can have it in your phone. You can have it on a note textbook. You don't need to have it in your mind. But if you have it there to help you, because you can't remember everything all the time. So, yeah, I'm in agreement for this. But what do you guys honestly think about some of these changes and changes that could be coming along, guys? I honestly want you guys' thoughts, especially if you are a parent, if you're a teacher. Feel free to share your thoughts about these possible changes to textbooks. Some of you guys will obviously be more insight on this than I do. But let me know your thoughts and more about this story down in the comments section below. Now, if you found this video informative or helpful to you, please hit that like button. We greatly appreciate it. Then share this across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really does help. And if you want to go one step further and financially support me and the work that I do on here and across other social media platforms, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or you can check out the Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms as well. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.